Captain Zexthor felt the cold grip of death closing around his ship. The lights on the bridge of the Kethmora flickered one last time before going dark forever. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow that made his scaled face look like a demon from ancient stories. "Life support at 30%, reported his science officer Velnara. Her voice shook with fear. "We have maybe 6 hours before the air runs out." Zexthor closed his large yellow eyes and tried to think. His crew of 12 had been on a simple mission. They were supposed to study the mineral content of dead planets in this empty region of space. It should have been safe. It should have been easy. Instead, their hyperdrive had exploded without warning, stranding them between the stars with no way home. "Any response to our distress calls?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing, Captain," said Communications Officer Kekstar. "We are too far from any known trade routes. No ships come through this area." The bridge fell silent, except for the humming of failing systems. Zexthor looked at his crew. These were good people, scientists and explorers who had families waiting for them at home. They did not deserve to die alone in the cold darkness of space. 3 light-years away, the human destroyer USS Vengeance cut through the void like a knife through black water. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift by on the main screen. His ship was on routine patrol duty along the outer edge of human space. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been in the Space Navy for 15 years, working his way up from a young ensign to ship captain. He was known for making smart decisions under pressure and never leaving anyone behind. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Collins from the communications station, "I'm picking up something strange." Amy was a small woman with red hair tied back in a tight bun. She was one of the best communication officers in the fleet, able to pick up signals that others missed. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, turning his chair toward her. "It's a distress signal, but not like any I've heard before. The language is completely unknown. The transmission pattern is different too. It's definitely not human." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. In all his years in space, humanity had never made contact with alien life. There were theories that other intelligent species existed somewhere in the galaxy, but no proof. If this was real, it would change everything. "Let me hear it," Jake said. Amy played the signal through the bridge speakers. Strange clicking and hissing sounds filled the air. Even without understanding the words, the desperation in the voice was clear. Someone was dying out there and calling for help. "Can you figure out where it's coming from?" Jake asked. "Working on it now, sir," Amy replied, her fingers dancing over her controls. "The signal is weak, but I think I can get a direction. It's coming from about 2 light-years away, in an empty system with no planets." Jake's executive officer, Commander Steve Rodriguez, stepped up beside the captain's chair. Steve was a stocky man with dark hair and serious brown eyes. He had been Jake's friend since their academy days. "Captain, this could be a trap," Steve said quietly. "We don't know anything about whoever sent this signal. They could be hostile." "Or they could be dying," Jake replied. "How long would it take us to reach the signal source?" "At maximum speed, about 18 hours, reported Lieutenant Dan Foster from the navigation station. Jake stared at the main screen, thinking hard. First contact with an alien species was supposed to follow strict protocols. He should report this to headquarters and wait for orders. But that would take days, maybe weeks. If someone was really in trouble, they would be dead long before help arrived. Amy turned in her chair. "Captain, the signal is getting weaker. I think their power is failing." That decided it for Jake. He had joined the Space Navy to protect people and save lives. It did not matter if those lives belonged to humans or aliens. No thinking being should die alone in space if he could prevent it. "Set course for the signal source," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir," Steve said, concern in his voice. "Are you sure about this?" Jake looked at his old friend. "Steve, imagine you're stranded in space with your family, sending out a distress call. Would you want the first ship to hear you to ignore your call because you might be dangerous? Steve thought about this for a moment, then nodded. "You're right, Captain. Setting course now." The USS Vengeance changed direction and jumped to faster than light speed. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Tony Garcia made sure the ship's systems were running perfectly. Tony was a genius with machines, able to fix things that other engineers said were impossible to repair. As the ship raced through hyperspace toward the unknown, Jake sat in his ready room and stared out at the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel. He thought about what they might find when they arrived. Would the aliens be friendly? Would they even be alive when the Vengeance got there? One thing was certain. This day would go down in history as the day humanity first answered a call for help from another species. Jake just hoped they would not be too late. The USS Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace in a shower of blue light. Captain Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair as the main screen showed what lay ahead. There, drifting silent and dark against the stars, was a ship unlike anything humans had ever seen. The alien vessel was long and curved, like a giant sea creature from Earth's oceans. Its hull was covered with strange markings that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. But there were no lights in its windows, no signs of power or life. "Scan the ship," Jake ordered. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park worked at the science station. Lisa was a calm woman, with black hair and smart, dark eyes. She was the ship's second-in-command and one of the best science officers in the fleet. "The ship is about 400 meters long," Lisa reported. "I'm reading 12 life signs aboard, but they're very weak. The ship has no power except for emergency systems, and those are failing fast." Jake felt his stomach tighten. They had made it in time, but barely. "Any signs of weapons?" asked Steve Rodriguez. "None that I can detect," Lisa said. "This appears to be a research vessel, not a warship." Jake stood up and walked to the front of the bridge. Through the main screen, he could see the alien ship slowly spinning in space, completely helpless. "Amy, try to contact them," he ordered. Amy Collins worked at her station, sending signals on different frequencies. After a few minutes, she shook her head. "They're not responding, Captain. Either their communications are down, or they don't understand our signals." "Life support on that ship is almost gone," Lisa reported. "They have maybe an hour before their air runs out completely." Jake made his decision quickly. "Lisa, you'll lead a rescue team. Take Tony Garcia and 4 security officers, bring portable life support units and emergency power cells." Lisa nodded. "What about the language barrier, sir?" "We'll figure it out as we go," Jake said. "Right now, the important thing is keeping them alive." 20 minutes later, a small shuttle left the Vengeance and flew toward the alien ship. Lisa sat in the pilot's seat, her heart beating fast. She was about to become one of the first humans to meet an alien species. The weight of history pressed down on her shoulders. Chief Engineer Tony Garcia sat beside her, checking his equipment. Tony was a short man with thick arms and clever hands. He could fix almost anything, but he had never worked on alien technology before. "Are you nervous?" Lisa asked him. Tony grinned. "Nervous? I'm terrified. But this is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me." The shuttle docked with the alien ship, with a soft bump. Lisa and her team put on their helmets and checked their air supplies. They had no idea what the atmosphere was like on the other ship, or if it would be safe for humans. "Remember," Lisa said over the radio, "we're here to help. Stay calm and move slowly. We don't want to scare them." The airlock door opened with a hiss. Lisa stepped through first, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The corridor beyond was filled with strange shapes and shadows. The walls were covered with symbols that meant nothing to human eyes. The air was thin and cold, barely breathable. Lisa's suit sensors showed that the atmosphere was mostly nitrogen and oxygen, but with trace gases that could be dangerous to humans over time. They moved deeper into the ship, following the weak life signs on their scanners. The alien vessel was beautiful in its own way, with curved walls and organic-looking designs. It was clear that whoever built this ship thought very differently from humans. "This way," whispered Tony, pointing down a corridor that glowed with faint emergency lighting. They found the aliens on what appeared to be their bridge. Lisa stopped in the doorway, staring in wonder. 12 creatures sat or lay at various stations around the room. They were tall and thin, with scales instead of skin. Their heads were large, with huge yellow eyes that seemed to take up half their faces. One of the aliens saw the humans and made a sound like a frightened bird. He tried to stand up, but was too weak. The others turned toward the doorway, their large eyes filled with fear and confusion. Lisa slowly removed her helmet, showing her human face. She raised her hands, palms out, in what she hoped was a universal sign of peace. "We're here to help," she said softly, even though she knew they could not understand her words. The alien who had first spotted them said something in their clicking, hissing language. Lisa could hear the desperation in his voice, even without understanding the words. Tony moved forward carefully, holding up one of the portable life support units. He pointed to it, then to the aliens, trying to show them what it was for. The device was designed to clean and renew the air in a small area. The apparent leader of the aliens, a creature with darker scales and gold markings on his head, spoke again. This time, his voice was calmer. He seemed to understand that the humans were trying to help. Lisa activated her suit's computer and started the Universal Translation Program. It was experimental technology, designed to learn new languages by listening to speech patterns and watching body language. "We help you," she said slowly, hoping the computer would translate her words into something the aliens could understand. The alien leader's eyes grew even larger. He said something that sounded like a question. "Yes," Lisa nodded. "Help. We are friends." Over the next hour, Lisa's team worked to set up life support equipment throughout the alien ship. The universal translator slowly began to learn the alien language, allowing for basic communication. The alien captain's name was something like Zexthor. His people called themselves the Vaxari. They had been scientists on a research mission when their ship broke down. Tony examined their engines and shook his head sadly. "It's hopeless," he told Lisa. "Their hyperdrive core is completely destroyed. This ship will never fly again." Lisa looked at the 12 Vaxari. They were so weak they could barely stand. Their ship was dying around them, and they were far from home with no way to get back. "We'll have to take them with us," she said. When she explained this to Captain Zexithor through the translator, the alien's reaction surprised her. Instead of relief, his large eyes filled with something that looked like shame. "We burden," he said in broken English that the computer was starting to produce. "You not know us? Why? Help." Lisa thought about how to answer. How could she explain that humans believed all intelligent life was precious, that they could not leave thinking beings to die in space, no matter what species they were? "Because it's right," she said simply. Captain Zexthor stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something that looked almost like a human smile, though it was hard to tell with his alien features. "Thank you," he whispered. As the rescue team prepared to transfer the Vaxari to the Vengeance, none of them knew that their act of mercy would soon lead them into the greatest danger they had ever faced. The 12 Vaxari refugees sat in the USS Vengeance's main cargo bay, which had been quickly converted into temporary living quarters. Captain Jake Morrison watched through the observation window as Dr. Kate Sullivan worked to treat the aliens' injuries and malnutrition. Kate was a skilled doctor with gentle hands and a kind heart. She had spent hours figuring out how to adapt human medical equipment for alien biology. The Vaxari's blood was green instead of red, and their hearts beat much slower than human hearts. But the basics of keeping them alive were surprisingly similar. "How are they doing?" Jake asked when Kate stepped out of the cargo bay. "Better," Kate replied, pulling off her medical gloves. "They were close to death when we found them. Another few hours and we would have been too late. Their leader, Zexthor, wants to speak with you." Jake nodded and entered the cargo bay. The air smelled strange now, filled with the alien scent of the Vaxari. It was not unpleasant, just different. Captain Zexthor was sitting up on one of the medical beds, looking much stronger than when they had first found him. "Captain Morrison," Zexthor said, his English much improved thanks to the translation computer. "I must tell you something important. We were not just doing research when our ship failed." Jake pulled up a chair and sat down. "What do you mean?" Zexthor's large yellow eyes grew dark with worry. "We were running away. My people, the Vaxari, are in great danger. There is an empire called the Hegemony that wants to destroy us all." "Why would they want to destroy you?" Jake asked. "Because we refused to join them," Zexthor explained. "The Hegemony conquers other species and makes them slaves. They told us to surrender our worlds or be wiped out. We said no." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was much more serious than a simple rescue mission. Zexthor continued. "I and my crew were chosen to carry proof of the Hegemony's plans to the Galactic Council. We have evidence that they plan to kill every Vaxari man, woman, and child, but our ship broke down before we could reach safety." "What kind of evidence?" Jake asked. One of the other Vaxari, a female named Velnara, spoke up. She was carrying a small device that glowed with blue light. "Communication records, battle plans, orders for genocide, all stored in our data cores." Jake stood up, his mind racing. This changed everything. The Vaxari were not just shipwreck survivors. They were refugees carrying vital information that could save their entire species. "How long before the Hegemony realizes you're missing?" he asked. "They may already know," Zexthor said quietly. "They were following us when our ship failed. If they find us..." He did not need to finish the sentence. Jake understood perfectly. If the Hegemony found the Vaxari on a human ship, it would mean trouble for everyone. Jake left the cargo bay and headed straight for the bridge. His crew looked up as he entered, seeing the serious expression on his face. "Amy, send a message to Fleet Headquarters," he ordered. "Tell them we've made first contact with an alien species and need immediate backup." "Yes, sir," Amy replied, her fingers flying over her controls. "Steve, I want you to review our weapons and defenses," Jake continued. "We might have company soon." Commander Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "What kind of company?" Before Jake could answer, Amy called out from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're big, and they're heading straight for us." On the main screen, 3 massive warships appeared against the stars. They were dark and angular, covered with weapon ports and armor plating. Each one was at least twice the size of the Vengeance. "Those are Hegemony ships," said Zexthor, who had followed Jake to the bridge despite being barely able to walk. "Heavy battle cruisers, very dangerous." "How dangerous?" Steve asked. "Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon," Zexthor replied. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were facing 3 ships that could easily destroy them, and they had nowhere to run. "Incoming message," Amy reported. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main display showed the bridge of one of the alien warships. A creature sat in the command chair that looked similar to the Vaxari, but larger and more frightening. His scales were black instead of green, and his eyes glowed red with anger. "I am War Commander Thekvan of the Hegemony Fleet," the alien said in perfect English. "You are harboring criminals who have stolen vital information from the Hegemony. Surrender them immediately, or we will destroy your ship." Jake stood up straight, meeting the alien's glare with his own steady gaze. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. The beings on my ship requested asylum, and I have granted it. They are under my protection." Thekvan's lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You do not understand the situation, human. Those criminals must be returned to face justice for their crimes against the Hegemony." "What crimes?" Jake demanded. "Theft of classified information, conspiracy against the state, terrorism," Thekvan replied coldly. Behind Jake, Captain Zexthor stepped forward. "Those are lies," he said, his voice shaking with anger. The only crime we committed was refusing to let you murder our children. Thekvon saw Zexthor and his red eyes blazed even brighter. Zexithor, you will return with me to face execution for your treason. Never, Zexithor replied firmly. Jake moved to stand between the two aliens. War Commander, I'm willing to discuss this situation diplomatically, but I will not surrender refugees who came to me asking for help. Then you have chosen death, Thekvon snarled. You have 1 minute to change your mind before we open fire. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Captain, Steve said quietly, we can't fight 3 heavy cruisers. We should consider surrendering the Vaxari. Jake turned to look at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. These were good people who had joined the Space Navy to protect others, not to abandon the innocent to save themselves. No, Jake said firmly. We don't abandon people who ask for our help, not ever. But sir, Amy protested, they'll destroy us. Jake smiled grimly. Maybe, but we're not going down without a fight, and we might just surprise them. He turned to the crew. Battle stations, everyone. Tony, I need everything you can give me from the engines. Amy, start sending our location and situation to any human ships in the area. Steve, prepare for evasive maneuvers. As the crew rushed to their positions, Jake looked at Captain Zexthor. I hope that evidence of yours is worth dying for. Zexithor's large eyes were filled with gratitude and sorrow. It contains the location of every Vaxari colony, every refugee ship, every hiding place. If the hegemony gets it back, my entire species will be extinct within a year. Jake nodded grimly. That settled it. No matter what happened next, the USS Vengeance would not surrender. On the main screen, the 3 hegemony warships began moving closer, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The first blast from the hegemony warships lit up space like a small sun. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his command chair as the USS Vengeance shook under the impact of enemy weapons. Shields down to 80%, shouted Lieutenant Dan Foster from his station. Return fire, Jake ordered. The Vengeance's weapons blazed to life, sending streams of energy toward the enemy ships. But the human destroyer's guns were designed to fight other destroyers, not massive battle cruisers. The shots barely scratched the enemy's thick armor. Direct hit on the lead cruiser, reported Steve Rodriguez. No visible damage. War Commander Thekvon's voice crackled over the communications system. Is that the best you can do, human? Your weapons are like insect bites against our ships. Jake ignored the taunt and focused on the tactical display. 3 huge ships against 1 small destroyer. In a straight fight, the Vengeance would be destroyed in minutes. But Jake had not survived 15 years in space by fighting fair. Amy, scan for nearby asteroid fields or debris, he ordered. There's a large asteroid belt about 2 million kilometers away, Amy replied. Set course for the asteroids, maximum speed, Jake commanded. Tony, I need everything you've got from the engines. Down in engineering, Chief Tony Garcia was already pushing the ship's engines beyond their normal limits. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he worked to keep the power flowing. I'm giving you 110%, Captain, Tony called over the intercom, but I can't keep this up for long without burning out the whole system. The Vengeance raced toward the asteroid field with the 3 hegemony cruisers in hot pursuit. The enemy ships were faster in a straight line, but the human destroyer was more nimble and could change direction quickly. They're gaining on us, Steve reported. Another blast rocked the ship. This time, sparks flew from several bridge stations and the lights flickered. Shields down to 60%, Dan called out. In the cargo bay, Dr. Kate Sullivan was trying to keep the Vaxari refugees calm while the ship shook around them. Captain Zexthor insisted on helping despite his weakness. Your captain is very brave, Zexthor told Kate as another blast shook the ship, but he cannot win this fight. You don't know Captain Morrison, Kate replied with a smile. He has a way of doing impossible things. On the bridge, Jake was studying the asteroid field as they approached it. The space rocks were huge, some as big as cities. They tumbled slowly through space, creating a dangerous maze that could crush a ship if the pilot made one wrong move. Captain, Amy said nervously, You're not seriously thinking of going in there, are you? That's exactly what I'm thinking, Jake replied. Steve, take us into the asteroid field. Stay close to the big rocks. The Vengeance plunged into the maze of spinning asteroids. Jake watched the main screen as house-sized boulders drifted past the ship's hull, sometimes close enough to touch. The enemy ships are following us in, Steve reported. Good, Jake said. In here, their size works against them. They can't maneuver as well as we can. War Commander Thekvan was discovering this for himself on the bridge of his flagship. The massive hegemony cruiser had to move slowly and carefully to avoid hitting the asteroids, while the smaller human ship darted between the rocks like a fish swimming through coral. Target the human ship, Thekvan roared. Destroy it. Sir, our weapons might hit the asteroids and cause them to shift, warned his weapons officer. I don't care. Fire. The hegemony ships opened fire, their massive guns sending energy beams through the asteroid field. Most of the shots missed the fast-moving Vengeance, but the beams hit several large asteroids instead. The space rocks exploded into millions of smaller pieces, creating a deadly cloud of debris. They're making it worse for themselves, Jake observed with satisfaction. Amy, can you get me a scan of their ship configurations? Working on it, Amy replied. Captain, I'm reading massive power buildup in their engine cores. They're running their systems at maximum power to keep up with us. Jake's eyes lit up with an idea. Zexthor, I need you up here. The Vaxari captain made his way to the bridge, moving carefully as the ship continued to shake and roll through the asteroid field. Do you know anything about hegemony ship designs? Jake asked. Some, Zexthor replied. We studied their ships before the war began. Why? Where are their weakest points? Zexthor thought for a moment. Their power distribution nodes are on the underside of each ship. If you could hit those points at the same time, they're drawing maximum power. The feedback would overload their systems, Jake finished. Brilliant. But you would need to get directly underneath all three ships at once, Zexthor warned. That would be suicide. Jake smiled grimly. Not if we do it right. Steve, I'm sending you coordinates for a specific asteroid. Take us there, fast. The Vengeance shot toward a massive asteroid that was slowly rotating in space. It was big enough to hide a ship behind, and it had deep craters on one side that could provide cover. What's the plan, Captain? Steve asked. We're going to use our torpedoes, Jake explained, but not to attack the ships directly. Tony, can you modify 3 torpedoes to emit a continuous energy pulse instead of exploding? Tony's voice came over the intercom. I think so, but why? Because we're going to turn them into guided energy weapons. We'll fire them at the asteroids around the enemy ships, then detonate the asteroids at exactly the right moment. Amy looked confused. I don't understand. When those asteroids explode, they'll create massive electromagnetic pulses, Jake explained. If we time it right, the pulses will hit the hegemony ships just as they're drawing maximum power. The feedback should overload their systems and disable them. That's crazy enough that it might work, Steve said with admiration. For the next 20 minutes, Tony worked frantically to modify the torpedoes while the Vengeance played a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids. The hegemony ships kept firing, but they could not get a clear shot at the nimble human destroyer. Torpedoes ready, Captain, Tony finally reported. Target selection complete, Amy added. I've identified 3 large asteroids positioned perfectly around the enemy ships. Jake took a deep breath. This was it, one chance to save his ship and the Vaxari refugees. Fire torpedoes, he ordered. 3 modified torpedoes shot out from the Vengeance, each one heading for a different asteroid near the enemy ships. The hegemony crews saw the torpedoes coming and tried to shoot them down, but the weapons were too small and fast. Torpedoes in position, Amy reported. Waiting for your signal. Jake watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect moment. The 3 enemy ships were clustered together, their engines running at maximum power as they tried to maneuver through the asteroid field. Now! Jake shouted. The 3 torpedoes detonated simultaneously, turning the asteroids into massive electromagnetic pulse generators. Waves of energy washed over the hegemony ships just as their power systems were operating at peak capacity. The result was spectacular. All three enemy ships suddenly went dark as their power grids overloaded and shut down. They drifted helplessly among the asteroids, their weapons silent and their engines dead. The bridge of the Vengeance erupted in cheers. They had done the impossible, defeating 3 battle cruisers with nothing but clever thinking and perfect timing. But Jake knew their victory was only temporary. The hegemony ships would repair their systems eventually, and when they did, they would be very angry. "Amy, send a message to the nearest human fleet base," Jake ordered. "Tell them we need immediate assistance, and send a copy of all the Vaxari data along with the message." "Already done, Captain," Amy replied with a smile. Jake turned to Captain Zex Thor, who was staring at the main screen in amazement. "Your people's evidence is now in safe hands," Jake told him. "Even if something happens to us, the galaxy will know the truth about the hegemony." Zex Thor's large eyes were bright with tears of gratitude. "You have saved my entire species," he whispered. "How can we ever repay you?" Jake smiled. "Just promise me something. When this war is over, let's work together to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." 3 days later, the USS Vengeance limped towards Starbase Omega, its hull scarred from battle and its engines running on emergency power. The asteroid field fight had damaged the ship more than Captain Jake Morrison had first realized, but they were alive, and so were the Vaxari refugees. "Captain," called Amy Collins from her station, "I'm getting a signal from the starbase. Admiral Patricia Hayes wants to speak with you immediately." Jake straightened his uniform and walked to the center of the bridge. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main screen, her gray hair pulled back in a strict bun and her blue eyes sharp with intelligence. She was known throughout the fleet as a tough but fair leader. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said, "I've read your reports. Do you realize what you've done?" "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "I rescued 12 civilians and prevented a genocide." Admiral Hayes almost smiled. "You've also started the first alliance between humanity and an alien species. The Vaxari evidence you sent us has been verified. The hegemony is planning to expand into human space within the next 5 years." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Are we talking about war, Admiral?" "We're talking about survival," Hayes replied grimly. "The hegemony has conquered 47 different species over the past century. They have thousands of ships and weapons we've never seen before. Without allies, humanity wouldn't stand a chance." The starbase grew larger on the main screen as the Vengeance approached the docking bay. Jake could see dozens of ships already docked there, including several alien vessels he didn't recognize. "Admiral, who are those other ships?" he asked. "Representatives from 6 different species that have been fighting the hegemony for years," Hayes explained. "The Vaxari data you brought us contains not just evidence of planned genocide, but also the locations of hidden resistance bases and refugee colonies. Captain Zex Thor's people have been very busy." In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Kate Sullivan was finishing her examination of the Vaxari refugees. All 12 were now healthy and strong, thanks to her careful treatment and the ship's improved food replicators, which Tony Garcia had modified to produce Vaxari-compatible meals. "Doctor," said Velnara, the Vaxari science officer, "I want to thank you for saving our lives. Your medical skills are remarkable." Kate smiled. "I learned as much from treating you as you learned from me. Your people's biology is fascinating. The way your scales can change color to show emotion, how your hearts have 3 chambers instead of 4. It's amazing." Captain Zex Thor entered the medical bay, looking healthier than he had since they'd rescued him. "Dr. Sullivan, I have a request. My people would like to share our medical knowledge with you. Perhaps together we can develop new treatments that will help both our species." "I'd be honored," Kate replied. As the Vengeance docked with the starbase, Jake felt a mixture of pride and worry. They had completed their mission and saved lives, but they had also opened a door that could never be closed again. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy, and that brought both wonderful opportunities and terrible dangers. Admiral Hayes met them in the docking bay, along with a group of beings that made Jake stop and stare. There were tall, blue-skinned creatures with 4 arms, small furry beings with large ears, and sleek reptilian humanoids that looked like distant cousins of the Vaxari. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said, "meet the Galactic Resistance Council. They've been fighting the hegemony for decades, waiting for someone powerful enough to tip the balance." A tall blue alien stepped forward. "I am Commander Vextai of the Andorian Fleet. Your actions have given us hope for the first time in many years. Will humanity join us in our fight for freedom?" Jake looked at the assembled aliens, then at his crew, then at the Vaxari refugees who had started this whole adventure. 3 days ago, he had been a simple patrol captain on a routine mission. Now he was being asked to help decide the fate of the galaxy. "That's not my decision to make," Jake said carefully. "But I can tell you that humans don't like bullies, and we don't abandon our friends." Admiral Hayes nodded approvingly. "Captain Morrison will be our liaison to the Resistance Council. His ship will undergo repairs and upgrades using technology provided by our new allies. Over the next few weeks, the starbase became a hub of activity as humans and aliens worked together for the first time. Tony Garcia spent his days learning about Vaxari power systems and Andorian shield technology. Amy Collins worked with alien communication specialists to develop better translation protocols. Dr. Sullivan established the first interspecies medical research center. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park, who had led the original rescue mission, was promoted to commander and given her own ship to lead joint human-alien patrol missions. She had become something of a celebrity among the aliens, who called her the first friend in honor of being the first human to set foot on an alien ship. 1 month after the rescue, Jake stood on the observation deck of the newly upgraded USS Vengeance and watched as construction crews installed new weapons and shield systems designed by alien engineers. The ship looked different now, sleeker and more powerful, but it was still home. Captain Zexthor joined him at the window. The Vaxari captain now wore a uniform that combined human and alien design elements, marking his new position as ambassador to the Resistance Council. "Do you ever regret answering our distress call?" Zexthor asked. Jake thought about the question for a moment. His life had become much more complicated since that day. He was no longer just a ship captain, but a symbol of human-alien cooperation. The weight of representing his entire species in galactic politics was sometimes overwhelming. "No," Jake said finally. "Saving lives is never wrong, and look what came from it." Through the window, they could see human and alien crews working side by side, sharing knowledge and building something greater than either species could create alone. Children from different worlds played together in the starbase's recreation areas, learning each other's languages and customs. "The hegemony won't give up easily," Zexthor warned. "They've been the dominant power in this galaxy for too long. When they realize what we're building here, they'll come with everything they have." Jake nodded grimly. "Then we'll be ready for them. Together." A year later, the first joint human-alien fleet launched from Starbase Omega. The USS Vengeance led the formation, its crew now including officers from 6 different species. In the captain's ready room, Jake kept a small memorial to the original rescue mission, a piece of metal from the Vaxari ship that had started it all. Dr. Sullivan's medical innovations had already saved thousands of lives across multiple species. Tony Garcia's engineering expertise had helped design new ship systems that were more efficient and powerful than anything the galaxy had seen. Amy Collins had developed a universal translation network that allowed instant communication between any known species. The hegemony was still out there, still conquering and destroying, but they no longer faced scattered resistance. For the first time in centuries, the free peoples of the galaxy stood united against tyranny. And it all began with a simple decision to answer a distress call from strangers in the darkness of space. As Jake looked out at the stars from his bridge, he smiled. Humanity had always dreamed of finding other intelligent life in the universe. They had imagined many different scenarios for first contact, grand diplomatic ceremonies, tense standoffs, even alien invasions. But the reality had been simpler and more beautiful than any of those dreams. When they finally met their galactic neighbors, it had not been as conquerors or diplomats, but as rescuers. And that simple act of compassion had opened the door to a friendship that would reshape the galaxy. The stars no longer looked cold and empty to Jake. They were filled with allies and friends, with hope and possibility. The universe was vast and dangerous, but humanity would not face it alone. The USS Vengeance and its mixed crew of humans and aliens sailed on into the galaxy, ready for whatever adventures awaited them among the stars.